Most business websites offer some way for website visitors to contact the business, to report an issue with a product or service, or ask a question, or even ask about employment. And there's lots of different ways that you can allow visitors to contact the business, but one of the most common ways is your basic contact form, which will ask things like name, email, other identifying information perhaps, and reason for contacting. Now, most contact forms you see, such as those on a website builder software with a pre-made form, will put things like name and email and other identifying information first, and then any kind of question about reason for contacting, such as asking for additional information, at the bottom of the form. Now, this sort of makes sense from the perspective of the business because a lot of these entries are going to go into some sort of software like a CRM where we're gathering names and emails. That's very important for the business for follow-up and things like that. But we once had someone who worked in sales tell us that, specifically with sales at least, the thing that people seem to want to talk about the most is what's their problem, what's the solution they're looking for. So this made us start wondering if these contact forms might perform better if we moved that reason for contacting field from the bottom of the form to the top of the form. Now, we thought this was an interesting idea due to two different psychological phenomena that we're aware of. The first is basically psychological activation energy, which is the idea that to perform any kind of task, there's a little bit of a hump that people have to get over because it's easier to just do nothing. So it requires a little bit of energy to even do anything at all. And the second is the consistency principle, which basically states that people will look to their own past actions to determine what they should do in the future and tend to seek consistency in their behavior. So if we move the field asking people why they're contacting the business to the top of the contact form, we suspected first that the psychological activation energy would be lower because the problem that people have is what they want to talk about the most anyway. And then once they've started the form by filling out that field, we speculated that the consistency principle would lead them to go ahead and finish the form and submit it. So in order to test this, we created two different forms and two different web pages housing these forms on the website of one of our clients. So as you can see, this first version is basically the default layout, or this typical layout. First name, last name, email, phone number. Please tell us about your counseling needs, because this particular client was a counseling center. And then we also had the second version, which everything is the exact same, except we changed the form order so that please tell us about your counseling needs was first. And what we did is we used our analytics software, which is called Matomo, to set up a split test so that 50% of visitors coming to this page, which is the contact page, would be shown this second form. And we ended up running this test for about 34 days. And here's the results that we got. So this is a graph that shows up on Matomo software. So as you can see, the original version, which is having the identifying information at the top of the form, had 53 visitors and 13 form submissions, which is the conversion number. And variation 1, which is the version having the please tell us what you want from counseling at the top of the form, there were 39 unique visitors and 26 conversions, which are form submissions. So therefore, the version with the please tell us about your counseling needs field at the top converted 172% better than the other version. If we use the chi-squared test to calculate statistical significance, that yields a greater than 99% chance that the results of this test are not due to random sampling error. You can see here that Matomo gave it a statistical significance of 80%. I don't know exactly how they calculated that. I'm suspecting that they calculated it lower because our sample size was pretty small. It was only 92 people total. So what does this tell us? Basically, although there is some uncertainty with the data because it was a small sample size, and if we had a bigger sample size, we would know even more definitively, the confidence intervals that we were able to calculate were still very high, which definitely leads us to believe that many more people actually submitted that form when we put the question at the top, asking what their question or problem or concern was. So that validates our hypothesis, and basically this is a strategy that we would recommend to any organization that wants to increase the number of submissions they're getting on forms on their website.